What's up, everybody? It's Tobin. Thank you for tuning in. As I told you on the podcast and on the fight show that aired on Sunday morning, I was out on Sunday morning, so you guys got a recorded version. I told you that I'd get you an episode later on to recap everything that went down because it was a very packed weekend. Also, just happened to be my 11th wedding anniversary, so it was a weekend that I had to put fights mostly on hold. Although my wife is an angel. After we had an awesome couple of days, we're tired by Saturday night after all the festivities that we had. So I was able to watch Gervonta Davis take on Mario Barrios. And then when I got home from where I was in the Keys, was able to check out Vasily Lomachenko and Masayoshi Nakatani on ESPN Plus. That's the beauty of ESPN Plus. You got it right there on demand, which is a great thing. So we'll get into a little bit of that. I saw one of the BKFC fights this weekend, which it ended up being the best fight of the night, from what I understand. I mean, it's definitely one of the best bare knuckle fights I've ever seen. So we'll start off with Gervonta Davis. That feels like the biggest one of the weekend, even with Vasily Lomachenko coming back and being as excellent as he was. Gervonta Davis versus Mario Barrios felt like a very, very special fight. It has everything that you want, with two guys in their 20s, undefeated record. One guy has a belt. Not looked upon as the WBA man at 140 pounds, but it's still a big deal. The guy's got some credibility to him in Mario. Dangerous fighter. And it was an interesting step up for Gervonta because, there's questions about, are you going up at two spots in weight class? I wasn't so worried about that. I think Gervonta Davis has been waiting for that move up in weight class for a long time. So I didn't find that to be something I was super worried about going into the fight, because Mario's not known as like a one-hitter quitter where, he could really, really hurt Gervonta Davis. But I do think that we definitely saw some of the questions. It all kind of was wrapped into one fight, and I think that that's why this was the most important fight of Gervonta Davis's career to date, because he was tested, and it wasn't necessarily that he was in a lot of danger, but I think that a lot of the things that plan A of satisfaction, where he gets him with the first set of knockdowns, and you're thinking, okay, this is it, this is over. And when Mario gets up and, comes back and doesn't wilt away after going to the canvas twice, I'm sure there had to be something in Gervonta Davis's mind like, damn, that because if that was somebody at 135, if that was somebody at 130 pounds or lighter, there's no shot that they're coming up and continuing to fight and actually looking really good, especially the next round, where it looked like to a lot of people Barrios won the following round after going and tasting the canvas twice. But I think that stuff is great for Gervonta Davis. And I didn't know how it was going to go. I was thinking to myself, man, I really just hope whoever goes out on this fight, whoever ends up losing, because they were kind of, after the knockdown happened, Barrios came back one round, Gervonta came back one round before it ultimately ended the way that it did, which was Gervonta Davis was just a picturesque body shot to Barrios, and that was about all she wrote. After that, I mean, the 11th round, we were waiting. The fact that he was able to get up from it was crazy enough as it is. And then the fact that he went for more just shows you what a tough SOB that Mario Barrios is. He is an absolute warrior. He's appropriately named. And I think had Gervonta Davis test himself a lot and had to dig down and had to look for other plans. And I think that we learned a lot about Gervonta, not just as a talent. I think everybody knew that this guy was phenomenal and is earning a lot of the superstar status that he has. But, when you see these guys have to go find another route to go win, and I think that he probably thought, man, this dude, I gave him the monster shots up top. That wasn't working. And then he ended up finding some money in the bank in the body shots, and that really was what sealed the deal for him. And I think that's just what shows you what's super impressive. But I remember thinking to myself before that happened, I'm like, I don't know how this fight's going to end up, because I thought that Gervonta was ahead. I know that the unofficial scores had Barrios ahead at one point, had him ahead pretty in hand before he touched the canvas twice. Then he had it even, and then it was kind of seesawing back and forth. I wasn't buying into the fact that Barrios swept the first 4 rounds. I thought it was pretty close. It wasn't the most egregious scorecard I've ever seen in my life, but I wasn't seeing that. I wasn't seeing a fight that Gervonta Davis was completely out of up until he got the knockdowns. I think that he very clearly was biding his time. He was looking for his shots, picking his spots in the right spot, in the right places. And man, I just was hoping that as the fight was ticking, I was like, man, someone's gonna end up losing this fight, obviously. But you hope to heavens that, like, man, I hope whoever does end up taking the L in this isn't thought of secondarily by the fans, because they just put on such a great show. And that is the thing that's a little bit infuriating about boxing, in that you have guys who go and take one loss. See Erickson Lubin earlier on in the card, and it takes him 5 years basically to get back to the spot where he's now at after getting the win over Jason Rosario, which, shout out to the Hammer, guest of the show last week. Great performance by him. He ended Jason Rosario with a body shot in the 6th. A lot of great body work that was getting done this week. A lot of fantastic body shots that were getting done this week. And you look at a guy like him who's 25 years old. He has so much career that's left him, but look how much rehab it took to get him back to this spot. And just doesn't feel like that would be the case in mixed martial arts. Now, look, this might end up being better for Erickson in that, he's, I think, had a lot of time to craft himself to be a better fighter. So if they would have thrown him right back to the Wolves at 22 years old, maybe he's not the same guy. Maybe he's not, maybe he goes and gets knocked out again, and he's not in the position that he is now. So I'm not saying it's always a bad thing, but I think in the minds of I just feel like guys are just so cast aside by just taking one loss. And if you come out of tonight and let's say Gervonta doesn't get the knockdowns and it does go the distance and Barrios found a way. Now he didn't, I know the scorecards were what they were, but let's just say if Gervonta ended up losing the fight, I thought tonight we saw such a great level from Gervonta Davis. Now, part of that also includes the great knockdowns in the 11th to stop the thing, but I just thought that we saw so many layers to his game, and just how he was picking things apart. And by the way, it was a very chaotic scene that Gervonta had to deal with too, because he's got Floyd Mayweather, biggest star in the game, who is yelling at him in the corner, which is cool because you have a guy who is as famous as him trying to give him corner advice, but also I'm sure it's just holy crap, Floyd's yelling at me, my trainer's trying to give me advice, all this stuff is going on, and to block that all out and go out and put forth your best stuff in the fight was just completely tremendous from Tank. It really, really was. And then from Mario's standpoint, to take those shots that he did in, the 7th round that he went down, and to get up and then to come back and win the next round, to have that kind of tenacity, to have that kind of toughness. And I'm sure at some point had Gervonta questions holy crap, maybe these guys are bigger than I thought they were. Maybe I did bite off more than I can chew. And looked like he really hurt Gervonta. So we also learned that Gervonta's got a hell of a chin on him, because he hit him with some big time bombs after getting put on the canvas. I just thought both of those guys just showed so much yesterday in that performance that it's going to be a shame that Mario Barrios may be in a spot where people look down because he took a loss. But man, I felt like his stock rose because of the stage of this fight. And it was a really, really great night. And Gervonta Davis, with all the scrutiny and the questions that come with him, the stuff outside the ring, the early weight cutting issues in his career, would he, with his height, is he going to be able to translate to up here? He looks like he's going to translate just damn fine. Just fine. And it just looks like he's just getting savvier and smarter every single time he steps in that ring with what he's able to do. So, hell of a performance by him. Vasily Lomachenko also returned yesterday against Masayoshi Nakatani on ESPN+. And Vasily Lomachenko, this was a real rout. Not as much drama as Gervonta Davis and Mario Barrios by a long shot. Vasily Lomachenko was really looked like himself. He looked like Lomachenko. He looked like the vintage Loma that we've all come to know and love. Knowing that he did take on a guy that was coming off of an eye injury, and that eye looked like it was in bad shape by the end of that, but he was just hitting with some hellacious left hands all fight long, and then really started unloading with some big combinations to the body. I mean, he just gave Masayoshi Nakatani the beating of a lifetime in this fight. And I think if you're a Loma fan and you had questions about whether he was over the hill or whether the guy was washed, or, were those questions about his shoulder? I know a lot of people scoff at the injury thing with Teofimo Lopez. And, to me, those are always tough. That's a famous one with Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather where he talked about the shoulder, and you're just like, I mean, if it's that bad, I get it. Like, you don't want to miss the biggest fights, but like, these are your arms. They're what you're. This is how you go and succeed in the fight. So it's hard to rule. Like, it's like, how do you go about this and say what would have happened, what could have happened? At the end of the day, you just got to say, Floyd Mayweather was the better fighter than Manny Pacquiao, and Teofimo Lopez was the better fighter than Lomachenko. And, maybe they'll have a rematch. That was a big talking point a lot during the fight because they kept going over to Senior and they kept saying that we will fight him, but he's got to be next. I don't know how much I buy that. I don't know how much I buy that. I'm kind of on the side of, I think it was Andre Ward who was saying that. Like, I don't really buy the fact that we're going to see that fight again. I don't either. I think that if you're Teofimo Lopez, one, it's clear that this weight cut thing is really bothered him going down to this weight class where he reigns supreme. Two, this George Kambosos fight keeps getting pushed down. If you guys missed the early part of the podcast, I will talk a lot about this coming up about the delay. But for those who are watching this video on YouTube and consuming it that way, there's news this week that fight's getting pushed back even further to September 11th on the Oscar De La Hoya Vitor Belfort fight night for Triller. And so there's all these questions with Triller, like, can they handle this idea of being a boxing company? There's rumblings around there about like whether or not Teofimo Lopez even had COVID, that this is all a big conspiracy because maybe the fight wasn't selling as well as they hoped, or maybe he was having weight cutting issues. Like, nobody just seems to take at face value that Teofimo Lopez all of a sudden had symptomatic COVID-19, which is kind of crazy in the midst of a pandemic, but this is the internet age that we're at. This is the age where you have Deontay Wilder saying that his water got spiked. So there's always a conspiracy around everything. But one way or another, getting back to Vasily Lomachenko, he looked absolutely fantastic. But the idea that, okay, if he's going to fight, then he's got to fight Vasily Lomachenko next because they're going to move up. I thought that was an interesting thing from Senior to say about Lomachenko. One, because I just don't know how much value the rematch would have. I think that people really do feel like Teofimo clearly won. And I don't know how much Lomachenko can get people back on his side to be like, yeah, I really, really want to see that fight again. I don't know. I do think that I think people are excited as that crop of, the new kings of Teofimo and Devin Haney and Gervonta and Ryan Garcia. People want to see those guys fight each other. And Lomachenko, as only 33 years old, is in a lot of ways long in the tooth, even though he doesn't even have as many pro fights as a lot of these guys, just because he's 33 years old and, isn't as good in the social media as these other guys are. So I think there's a lot of hope that, Teofimo is going to eventually go up and get the Tank Davis fight, or fight Ryan Garcia, or fight Devin Haney, whether that be at 135, whether that be at 140. I think those are the fights that honestly will intrigue a lot of fans. And people are looking forward to this next generation, getting a chance to go at each other. And it's the interesting thing for Teofimo is, it sucks that he has this delay of not fighting Kambosos because, one, I do think it's going to be a tougher fight than people think. And two, now we have a summer that's really been owned by everybody else. Like, everybody else has had their opportunity to shine outside of Ryan Garcia, because Ryan Garcia was dealing with personal stuff, and it seems like he's, back on en route to making his comeback. But Devin Haney, I thought, looked really good in his last fight. I know that some people were a little bit critical about how it ended against Linares, but again, this is where I think, as boxing fans, you need to be a little bit more understand that these guys are young. These guys are young, and you want them to take risks. Then you also got to be acceptable to the fact that there's going to be flaws and there's going to be mistakes. And I thought Devin Haney looked, for 10 rounds of that fight, looked championship good. I thought that he looked tremendous in that fight. He was playing a very, very dangerous game. He got clipped. He held on late. Yeah, nobody wants to see you take a knee to end a fight, but for the most part, that was a really, really good performance from him. And he has, I think, the most on the outside looking in, because I think he's got looked upon as maybe the most boring style out of everybody else. Maybe is the best pure boxer out of everybody else. Doesn't really have the belt leverage that everybody else has. Doesn't have the social media presence of a Ryan Garcia. But very, very may well be the best one out of all of them. Gervonta just had another highlight reel night in an epic fight. I think earned a lot of, I don't want to say skeptics, but I think people who were kind of being like, who had any questions about what his championship merit was, I think they watched Gervonta Davis against Barrios tonight, and their respect for him went up another level. He's got Kevin Durant tweeting about him. He's got superstars tweeting about him. People are into watching Tank Davis fight. He is maybe the most mainstream out of all of them. But then again, you have Ryan Garcia, who's got maybe the biggest social media following out of all of them. Does the viral videos, has the Canelo connection. But he's been on the sidelines with it. So what I'm coming down to is you have Teofimo, who's got all the gold and he has all the merits, but he's also in the spot where, okay, now we haven't seen him fight in forever. He's fighting a guy in George Kambosos, who I'm excited to watch fight, because you guys know I have a connection to George, and I like George Kambosos. We've interviewed him a ton on this show. We've had them both on the program together. It was a fireworks interview. It was fantastic. I was fired up for the matchup. It was going to be down here in Miami. I don't know if it's going to be anymore. We'll see. I mean, it wasn't going to be because it was going to be in August, but now it's September. Maybe it will be. Who knows? The point is, we're not watching Teofimo Lopez fight. And I do think that in this age of relevance where we're trying to see, who's the guy, more people have on their mind right now Gervonta Davis and what he did to Mario Barrios and his viral knockout against Santa Cruz and all that type of stuff, more so than Teofimo, who's just kind of been on the sidelines, and now his dad is saying, I only got one more fight in the division that I'm the king at. Which is just like, really? So like all this talk about, I want to fight everybody. Maybe they will. I mean, they're all still young. They can all move up in weight classes. Nobody says that these fights have to happen at 135. That's not written in stone. That's not written in law. But I think if you're Teofimo Lopez and you want to be, I think that this is where Lopez misses out. If you're the guy who has all the belts, there is a prestige, there is a leverage that goes there. Okay. There is something there. Even if you're not Gervonta Davis popular or Ryan Garcia popular, there's still some prestige to, hey, he's just like Lomachenko was. Lomachenko maybe necessarily wasn't the most popular guy, but he was very popular, and he was the man who had the belts. If you're Teofimo Lopez and you just go up to 140 and you just drop the belts, okay, well, you're not the man anymore. You're popular. I mean, listen, people like watching Teofimo Lopez fight, but I don't think that he's Gervonta Davis popular. I don't think that he's Ryan Garcia popular. And so I do think that while I get it, he's not having a great time with the weight cuts at 135 pounds, there still is value to being the man there. And so I would try and elongate that process or do whatever you have to do to make sure he's still able to make that. I would say for at least another year. I wouldn't, make people remember your name. Make sure that you're on the till with these other guys. Because if those guys go up to 140 and now all of a sudden they're fighting each other in another weight class, people are going to be talking about them and not you. And for Lomachenko, look, I think that he did remind a lot of people about why you love him. That exciting style. I think he's probably got the most probably the most exciting, most unorthodox offensive style for a little guy since Manny Pacquiao. Like, he's just got that never know where he's going to hit you, all these crazy angles, that explosiveness, that propensity to beat big men. I think that, we were reminded a lot about that tonight. But it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Mentioned Erickson Lubin, very happy for him. He got himself a win over Jason Rosario. We'll see if that ends up with him rematching Jermell Charlo. It seems like the Charlos are all planning to move up as well, so maybe Erickson ends up fighting for a vacant belt. But either way, he's taking the hard road there and could have taken a much easier opponent to kind of get in this elimination status, and he didn't, and beat a guy that was the man. And really, really good performance by him. He just continues to be a really well-rounded fighter, and I think is a dangerous one at 154 pounds. And finally, I want to mention BKFC. Shout out to my guy Hector Lombard. He ended up getting himself a championship. And so shout out to Hector. Luis Palomino kept his belt. I didn't see what happened in the heavyweight fight, but the one fight I did see live, because it was going late. I saw this fight live, was Thiago Alves against Yuli the Monster Diaz. And holy hell, what a fight these guys. I don't know if you guys could find that fight anywhere. I don't know if you're able to still buy it on BKFC's app. Do yourself a favor. Whatever it is, I think it's like $6 for the BKFC app. I don't think it's very expensive. Go find this fight. It is one of the craziest bare knuckle fights. You don't see a ton of bare knuckle fights that go back and forth. Usually bare knuckle, and I've seen a ton of them, it usually goes one direction, it ends quickly, and that's kind of it. It's very rare that you have a situation where a guy gets knocked down, Crimson Mask is bloodied, and he works his way all the way back to win the fight. And that's what happened with Thiago Alves and Yuli the Monster Diaz. Yuli Diaz, who, this was his moment. This was BKFC. He had the 3-second knockout. This is a man who is, the renaissance man of combat sports. Boxing. He does MMA. He does bare knuckle. He said he wanted to even do jiu-jitsu matches. Like, the guy just lives for combat sports. But I felt like, at his age, with his look, I'm like, bare knuckle is the place for Yuli the Monster Diaz. I think this guy's going to have a home. And he had the infamous 3-second knockout, really put him on the map, got him this title fight against Thiago Alves. This was the fight I was bar none looking forward to the most. And it lived up to everything you could hope for. And I hurt for Yuli as a guy who loves the dude, who has had him on my show multiple times, for everything that he's, from boxing fights that he's promoted at the Hard Rock to Titan FC fights that he's promoted at the arcade that they always do their fights at. The guy, and it's just such a nice dude to always speak to. And so I was really hoping he was going to have his moment to hoist gold, to be a champion of a promotion. But Thiago Alves is a badass, man. And for Thiago, the thing that's impressive about it is, like, this is a guy who's, kind of just gone by the wayside at the UFC, was always just kind of, hey, you're going to fight Thiago Alves. He was a gatekeeper, and then made this move over to BKFC. I talked to him before his debut, and he was very excited to do something new. And, you would think if that's in other promotions, like, he takes that kind of a beating early on in the fight. He just wilts away, and he didn't. He just kept coming. And he was going, and he was hitting Yuli Diaz with some shots to the body that he wasn't expecting. I mean, he really was working him all over the place. They're both bleeding, profusely all over the place, cut up from these vicious bare knuckle fights, and, eventually gets the stoppage and gets the win. It was just an epic night for Thiago Pitbull Alves to become the middleweight champion in BKFC. So that was the card I was really bummed out I wasn't able to go to live this past weekend. But again, it's I'm sure I'll be at the next one. I do enjoy going to those shows, and just a great performance by both of those men. That's one of those ones, again, I hope the theme that you come out with today with some of these performances, sometimes there are epic fights between both gentlemen in that ring, and somebody gets their arm raised, even if a guy stops another guy, and it doesn't mean that the person who ended up getting knocked down doesn't mean that you can't respect that fighter even more. Okay? Look, the victor goes the spoils, and they propel and they go on and they reap the benefits and all that type of stuff. But it doesn't mean there shouldn't be some benefits to the guys who get defeated as well, because they put everything on the line for you when they go into these rings or squared circles or octagons or cages. And you look at a guy like Mario Barrios, I thought his stock went up. You look at a guy like Yuli Diaz, even losing to Thiago Alves, his stock went up. And Thiago Alves, what a story. He gets his moment in the sun again to be a champion in a promotion. His stock goes up. And then, of course, Gervonta Davis. I think more than anybody, his stock was already high. But, you know, this thing's like it's like a cryptocurrency that like got to the moon or whatever the hell you wackos on Reddit say. It's sky high right now if you're Gervonta Davis. So that's our show. That's our recap for the weekend, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry it came a little bit delayed. We will be more on point next week with a holiday weekend. Everybody have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you next time.